All it took was a simple hello in sign language, and suddenly she was sitting at the dinner table of a man the whole city feared. The dinner rush hadn't even started yet when Naomi Bennett noticed the woman at table 7. She sat near the window, her posture straight, her silver hair neatly twisted into a bun that seemed too perfect to be casual. The sunlight hit the diamond on her finger, sending tiny flashes across the tablecloth. She wasn't looking at the menu. She wasn't looking at anyone. She was staring at the front door, waiting for someone. Naomi had seen all kinds of customers working at Giovanni's Trattoria, a family-run restaurant in Toledo, Ohio. Construction workers stopping in for a quick plate of pasta, couples trying to fix their relationships over red wine, even the occasional local celebrity. But this woman was different. There was something about the stillness around her, as if the room itself was careful not to disturb her peace. "Table 7?" whispered Jordan, one of the younger waiters, leaning in behind Naomi. "You see her? That's Luciana Moretti. You know who her son is, right?" Naomi frowned. "Should I?" Jordan's eyes darted toward the door, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Vincenzo Moretti, the guy who owns half the city's real estate. And, some say he runs other things too. You don't mess with that family." Naomi didn't respond. She just picked up her notepad, straightened her apron, and walked toward the table. Fear wasn't in her nature. She was quiet, shy even. But she believed people were people, no matter who their family was. Still, as she approached, she noticed something odd. Luciana was trying to communicate with the waiter before her, but her hands were moving, not her lips. The waiter stood frozen, confused, muttering apologies before hurrying away. Naomi realized immediately the woman was deaf. Luciana's expression shifted, a mix of frustration and sadness. She turned her head slightly, scanning the room. Her eyes landed on Naomi, curious but cautious. Naomi hesitated for half a second, then smiled softly and began signing. "Hello, my name is Naomi. Can I take your order?" Luciana's eyes widened, her entire face softening in surprise. Her lips formed the words, "You sign?" Naomi nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "A little. My grandmother was deaf." I learned from her. The corners of Luciana's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. She signed slowly, "Thank you, dear. Everyone keeps shouting at me as if I can suddenly hear them." Naomi laughed gently, replying, "That happens more often than you'd think." The tension that had filled the air seemed to melt for a moment. Luciana looked around the restaurant, then back at Naomi, signing her order. A simple meal, spaghetti and a glass of red wine. Naomi nodded, repeating it out loud for the kitchen staff. But as Naomi turned to leave, she noticed something. Several customers had stopped eating. Jordan was frozen near the counter. Even the manager, Mr. Rossi, stood watching. They weren't staring at Luciana. They were staring at Naomi, as if she had done something outrageous. When Naomi walked back to the counter, Jordan whispered, "You just signed to her?" In front of everyone. Naomi frowned, confused. "Why wouldn't I?" "Because that's his mother, Naomi. Vincenzo Moretti's mother. You don't draw attention to her. You just serve her and walk away." Naomi sighed quietly, wiping her hands on her apron. She's a customer, not a headline. But even as she said it, she could feel the room's unease pressing against her like a heavy curtain. Everyone seemed to know something she didn't, something that made them afraid to even look at that table. Luciana, however, looked perfectly at peace. For the first time since she walked in, she appeared comfortable. She was writing something on a small notepad she carried, a faint smile still on her lips. Naomi didn't know it yet, but that small act of kindness, that moment of signing a few simple words, would change everything. But what Naomi couldn't see was that the front door was about to open, and the man walking through it would make sure her life would never be the same again. The bell over the restaurant door gave a soft ring, the kind that usually meant another family or couple had come in. But this time, no one moved. Conversations cut short. Even the clinking of silverware seemed to stop. Naomi glanced up from the counter and saw 3 men walking in. 2 large ones in black suits and the one in the middle, tall, dark coat, eyes sharp and watchful. That was Vincenzo Moretti. Naomi had never seen him in person before, but she didn't need anyone to tell her who he was. There was something about the way people reacted to him, like the air had been pulled out of the room. The manager rushed over to greet him, voice trembling with forced cheer, while the men behind him scanned every corner like they were expecting a threat to jump from behind the breadsticks. Luciana noticed her son and lifted a hand. A warm smile crossed her face, one that instantly softened the intimidating man everyone whispered about. Vincenzo walked toward her slowly, kissed her forehead, and signed something Naomi couldn't fully see. It wasn't the kind of interaction that screamed crime boss. It looked more like a son who loved his mother deeply. Naomi, standing behind the counter, caught herself staring. When Luciana pointed toward her and signed something to her son, Naomi quickly looked down, pretending to wipe a table. But it was too late. Vincenzo's eyes had already found her. He didn't say anything at first. He just studied her. Calm, unreadable, the kind of gaze that made you want to fix your posture. The manager stepped in, stuttering, "Mr. Moretti, please, let me get your usual table, sir." Vincenzo ignored him. He walked straight to where Naomi stood. "You're the waitress who signed to my mother," he said quietly. His voice was deep but calm, like someone used to being obeyed without needing to raise it. Naomi's heart picked up a little. "Yes, sir." She seemed frustrated, so "You know sign language?" "Yes, my grandmother was deaf. I learned when I was a kid." For a brief second, his expression shifted. Something softer flickered there before disappearing again. "My mother hasn't smiled like that in a long time," he said. "You did something kind today." Naomi didn't know what to say. She just nodded, unsure if "you're welcome" was appropriate when talking to a man like him. Luciana motioned for Naomi to come back to the table. Naomi walked over carefully, pretending she didn't feel the eyes of the entire restaurant on her back. Luciana signed again, slower this time. "My son says thank you. He doesn't meet many people who treat me like a person instead of a secret." Naomi smiled. "You're welcome. You seem kind. You just need people who listen differently." Luciana chuckled silently, the kind of laugh that shook her shoulders slightly. She gestured toward the chair across from her and signed, "Sit with me a minute, please." Naomi hesitated. The manager caught her eye and shook his head vigorously from across the room, mouthing, "Don't." But Luciana's face was so open, so motherly, that Naomi couldn't say no. She sat down. Luciana took her notepad and wrote something in neat, cursive handwriting. "People fear my son, but he is not all darkness. He lost his father young. Sometimes the world blames us for surviving it." Naomi read the words twice, unsure how to respond. She looked up to see Luciana's eyes glistening, not with sadness exactly, but memory. Naomi gently took the pen and wrote, "Surviving isn't wrong. Sometimes it just means you had no choice." Luciana smiled again, nodded, and put her hand over Naomi's for a brief moment. A soft, motherly gesture that carried more gratitude than words ever could. Naomi stood, smoothing her apron, and started back toward the kitchen. She didn't realize Vincenzo had been watching the whole time. His eyes followed her as if he was trying to figure her out, who she was, what she wanted, why she wasn't afraid. When Naomi returned with Luciana's food, the woman gestured for her to taste the sauce. Naomi laughed quietly, shaking her head. "I'm not allowed," she said, but Luciana insisted. Naomi dipped her spoon, tasted, and smiled. "It's perfect." For the first time that night, the restaurant seemed to breathe again. People started talking softly. The tension faded just a little. Naomi didn't know it yet, but that simple act, sitting with Luciana, talking to her like a friend, had already changed how the Morettis saw her. But while Naomi thought she was just being kind, Vincenzo was already thinking about how to bring her deeper into his world, a place she wasn't built for. The next evening, Naomi came in early for her shift. The night before had been strange, but she told herself not to overthink it. People eat, people talk, people leave. That's what she kept repeating in her head. But when she walked into Giovanni's, something was different. The entire staff was whispering near the counter, the manager pacing nervously. Naomi set down her bag and asked, "What's going on?" Jordan glanced at her, eyes wide. "They're back," he said. "Luciana and him." Naomi looked toward table 7. There they were, Luciana smiling warmly, and Vincenzo sitting across from her, calm and unreadable as always. It wasn't unusual for repeat customers, but this time, Naomi noticed something new. Luciana had brought a small book with her, a beginner's guide to American Sign Language. When Naomi approached, Luciana beamed and signed, "I've been practicing. You made me want to learn again." Naomi couldn't help but grin. You're already great, she replied, and Luciana laughed silently. Vincenzo leaned back in his chair, watching the exchange. You're really good at that, he said. I've been signing since I was 8, Naomi replied. My grandmother never learned to read lips, so this was how we talked. Luciana signed something to her son, then motioned toward Naomi, smiling. Naomi caught part of it. Something about her being patient, kind. Vincenzo chuckled softly, his expression loosening. She says you remind her of her sister. She hasn't said that about anyone in years. Naomi's cheeks warmed. That's sweet of her. The rest of the meal passed peacefully. Naomi helped Luciana practice signing the names of dishes on the menu, and even Vincenzo tried to join in, though his attempts drew silent laughter from his mother. For the first time, the restaurant didn't feel tense when they were there. It almost felt normal. When Naomi brought the check, Vincenzo stood and said, You made my mother's week. She doesn't like going out much anymore, but she asked to come here again. I'm glad she's comfortable, Naomi said. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a folded envelope, and placed it on the counter. That's for you. Consider it a thank you. Naomi looked down at it, then back at him. I can't take that. It's not a bribe, he said with a half smile. It's appreciation. I appreciate that, Naomi replied carefully, but I'm fine. Really, Vincenzo tilted his head slightly, studying her again. You're not like most people. Because I don't take money I didn't earn? Because you treat people like people. He paused, his tone dropping. Even people others think you should fear. Naomi didn't know how to respond. She just gave a small nod and said, Your mother's a wonderful woman. She deserves kindness. He smiled faintly. You'd be surprised how rare that is. Luciana interrupted, tapping the table to get their attention. She signed something fast, her hands moving gracefully. Vincenzo translated, She says you should come by tomorrow after your shift. She wants to cook for you, says she owes you dinner. Naomi hesitated. That's really kind, but I don't want to intrude. Luciana shook her head, signing firmly, You are welcome. Naomi smiled softly. Okay, I'll come. Vincenzo nodded once, satisfied. Good. My driver will pick you up after work. As they left, Jordan rushed over. Are you crazy? He whispered. You're going to their house? Naomi folded her apron, exhaling slowly. It's just dinner, Jordan. Dinner with a mob family, he hissed. Naomi shrugged. It's dinner with a kind woman and her son. That's all. But when she locked up later that night, a black car idled across the street, headlights glowing faintly. The driver inside leaned out the window, making a small gesture that said, We'll see you tomorrow. Naomi froze for a moment, unsure if she should wave back. She didn't. She just walked home quietly, her mind filled with questions she couldn't quite name. But Naomi had no idea that dinner wasn't just dinner. It was the beginning of a debt she never meant to owe. The next evening, Giovanni's felt quieter than usual. Even the music that usually played faintly through the speakers seemed softer, like the whole restaurant was holding its breath. Naomi tried to keep her thoughts steady, but her mind was already elsewhere, on that dinner invitation waiting at the end of her shift. When the clock finally struck 9, she hung up her apron and grabbed her coat. Outside, the night air was cool and the street was nearly empty. Parked across from the restaurant was a sleek black car, the same one from last night. A man in a gray suit stepped out and nodded politely. Miss Bennett? Mr. Moretti sent me to take you to the house. Naomi hesitated for a second, her hand tightening on her purse strap. Right. Okay. She climbed into the car, the smell of leather and faint cologne filling the air. They drove in silence through quiet neighborhoods until the city lights began to fade. Finally, the car turned down a long driveway lined with oak trees and stopped in front of a large stone house with wide steps and soft yellow lights glowing through the windows. The door opened before Naomi even reached it. Luciana stood there, smiling brightly, motioning her inside. Naomi immediately relaxed a little. The house was warm, cozy even, not the cold mansion she'd expected. Family photos lined the hallway, most of them old, showing a much younger Vincenzo with his parents, laughing, hugging, living ordinary moments. Luciana signed happily, You came. I'm so glad. Naomi smiled back. I wouldn't miss it. Vincenzo appeared from another room, no coat this time, just a black shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked less like the man from the restaurant and more like someone trying to play host. You made it, he said. I wasn't sure you'd actually come. I said I would, Naomi replied. He gave a short smile. Not many people keep their word to me. Luciana motioned toward the kitchen table where dishes of pasta, bread, and roasted vegetables were already waiting. Naomi sat down, and to her surprise, Luciana sat beside her while Vincenzo poured the wine. The smell was incredible. Fresh basil, garlic, olive oil. Luciana signed, "Eat, please. I made this myself." Naomi laughed. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble." Luciana touched her hand gently. "You gave me something special. You reminded me I'm still part of the world." Naomi looked up, her chest tightening a little. "You are," she said softly. Dinner flowed naturally. Vincenzo asked about Naomi's family, her childhood, why she worked at Giovanni's. She answered honestly, though she kept her responses short. She'd grown up in Columbus, raised by her grandmother after her parents split. Her grandmother had taught her patience, kindness, and how to listen without needing words. At one point, Luciana left the table to get dessert, leaving the two of them alone. The silence felt heavier now, filled with things neither of them knew how to say. Vincenzo finally spoke. "You know who I am, don't you?" Naomi hesitated. "People talk." "And what do they say?" "That you own a lot of property," she said carefully. He smirked slightly. "That's one way to put it." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "You're not scared of me, are you?" Naomi met his eyes. "Should I be?" His smile faded, but not from anger, more like surprise. "Most people are." "Maybe I'm not most people." He studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "No, you're not," Luciana returned with a tray of cannoli, smiling between them as if she sensed something unspoken. She placed one in front of Naomi and patted her hand affectionately. As they ate dessert, Luciana began signing something Naomi didn't understand completely. The movements were faster, more emotional. Vincenzo translated softly. "She's saying she hasn't felt peace like this in years. She's thanking you again." Naomi felt a lump rise in her throat. "She doesn't need to thank me," she said quietly. "I didn't do anything special." "She thinks you did." After dinner, Luciana insisted Naomi take home a basket of leftovers. Vincenzo walked her to the car. Before she got in, he said, "You don't realize what tonight meant to her." "Or to me," Naomi smiled gently. "You don't owe me anything." He looked at her for a long moment, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "That's not how my world works." Naomi frowned. "What does that mean?" He didn't answer. He just gave a half smile and opened the car door for her. "Get home safe, Naomi." As the car pulled away, she looked back toward the house. Luciana waved from the window, smiling softly. But Vincenzo stood behind her, still unmoving, watching. But that look wasn't gratitude anymore. It was interest. And interest, in his world, was the most dangerous kind of attention Naomi could have ever earned. The next few days passed quietly, or at least Naomi tried to convince herself they did. She went to work, smiled at customers, cleared tables, but her thoughts kept drifting back to that dinner. Luciana's warmth, Vincenzo's watchful eyes, that final sentence he'd said, "That's not how my world works." It lingered in her mind, echoing every time the restaurant door opened. By Thursday, she was starting to think she'd imagined the whole thing, until a tall man in a dark gray suit walked into Giovanni's carrying a small black envelope. He approached the counter with the kind of confidence that didn't need words. "Naomi Bennett?" he asked. She hesitated. "Yes?" He handed her the envelope. "From Mr. Moretti." Then he turned and left before she could say anything else. Naomi stared at the envelope, her pulse quickening. She took it to the back, away from the curious eyes of her coworkers, and carefully opened it. Inside was a handwritten note in neat, bold cursive. "You have a good heart, and people like you don't come around often. My mother would like you to join us for lunch this Sunday. Also, there's a position I think you'd be perfect for. Let's talk. VM." She exhaled slowly, rereading the words. A position? What did that mean? She wasn't looking for another job, but something about the way he'd written it, polite but firm, made it feel less like a request and more like a summons. That Sunday, she found herself once again in front of the Moretti house. The same driver opened the door, and Naomi stepped inside, clutching the small bag of pastries she'd brought as a thank you. Luciana greeted her at the door with a bright smile, signing excitedly, "You came! You look beautiful!" Naomi laughed softly. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Never," Luciana signed, motioning her inside. The smell of roasted herbs and coffee filled the kitchen, but this time, Vincenzo wasn't sitting casually at the table. He was standing near the back window, phone in hand, his expression sharp. When he saw Naomi, he finished his call, slid the phone into his pocket, and gave a small nod. "Glad you made it," he said. "Please, sit." Naomi took a seat across from him, the morning sunlight cutting across the table between them. "So," she began carefully, "you mentioned a position?" He folded his hands together. "Yes, my mother likes you. She trusts you. That's rare." Naomi smiled faintly. "She's easy to like." "I agree," he said, his tone softening. "But she's also vulnerable. Her hearing loss makes her a target sometimes. I can't always be here to look after her." Naomi's brow furrowed slightly. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying I'd like to hire you," he interrupted, calm and deliberate, "as her companion. She needs someone to take her shopping, to doctor appointments, help her with her sign practice. Just keep her company. I'll pay you well. More than you make at Giovanni's." Naomi sat back, stunned. "I appreciate that, but I have a job already." "I know, but this isn't about money," he said quietly. "It's about my mother's happiness. You've given her something no one else has. Peace." Naomi hesitated. Part of her wanted to say yes right away. Luciana had been nothing but kind, but another part of her, the part that noticed the quiet men stationed near the doors, the heavy locks on every window, told her to be careful. "I'll think about it," she said finally. Vincenzo studied her face, then nodded. "Fair enough. Take your time, but understand, when I make an offer, it's because I mean it." Luciana returned with plates of pasta, cheerfully interrupting the tension that had started to fill the room. She signed, "You work too much. Spend time living, not just serving." Naomi laughed softly. "You sound like my grandmother." Luciana smiled warmly. Then she was a smart woman. The rest of the lunch went easily, filled with light conversation. Vincenzo even shared a few stories from his childhood, some funny, some clearly painful. It was the first time Naomi had seen him look human. Not intimidating, not powerful, just a son trying to make his mother happy. As she stood to leave, he handed her a small card with his number on it. "Call me when you decide," he said. "No pressure." "Thank you," she said, taking it. He paused before adding quietly, "And Naomi, I'm a man who keeps his word. Always." She smiled politely, unsure how to respond. "Good to know." When she got home that evening, she placed the card on her kitchen counter, staring at it for a long time. It felt heavy in a way that paper shouldn't. By the next morning, curiosity won. She called the number. A voice answered almost immediately. "Naomi," Vincenzo said, calm and assured. "I was hoping you'd call." Naomi took a deep breath. "I'll take the job." "Good," he replied. "You just made my mother very happy." There was a pause. "And you just made me owe you something." Naomi frowned. "Owe me?" "Everyone who helps me helps us, and I don't forget my debts." She didn't understand it then. Not fully, but she would soon. But by the time Naomi realized what that debt really meant, she'd already stepped too far into Vincenzo Moretti's world to walk back out. The new routine started quietly. 3 days a week, Naomi would leave Giovanni's after lunch and head to the Moretti home. Luciana was always waiting with a smile, eager to show her the new words she'd learned in sign language or to talk about old memories from Italy. Naomi loved those moments, the laughter, the peaceful afternoons spent helping Luciana read subtitles on classic movies, the shared cups of coffee on the back porch. If it weren't for the men outside, standing watch near the gate, it might have felt normal. Sometimes, Vincenzo would appear near the end of the day, usually dressed sharp, phone in one hand, eyes tired. He'd say a few words to his mother, glance briefly at Naomi, and disappear into his office. But other times, he lingered. He'd ask about Naomi's family, about her dreams, about why she always seemed so calm. "You don't seem like someone who belongs in chaos," he told her one evening. Naomi smiled faintly. "I try not to live in other people's storms." He gave a short laugh. You'd never survive in my world then. I'm not trying to, she said simply. That answer seemed to amuse him. Smart, he said, but there was something else in his voice. Admiration, maybe, or curiosity. Weeks passed, and Naomi became almost like family. Luciana adored her. Even the guards began greeting her by name, but not everyone was pleased. One afternoon, as Naomi was leaving, a man stepped out of a black SUV parked near the end of the driveway. He wasn't one of Vincenzo's men. He looked older, sharp suit, cold stare. Miss Bennett, he said smoothly, you have a moment? Naomi hesitated. Who are you? He smiled without warmth. A friend of the family. Just wanted to make sure you understand who you're working for. She folded her arms. I know who I'm working for. He tilted his head slightly. Do you? Mr. Moretti is a complicated man. People close to him often find themselves involved. Involved in what? The man's smile widened slightly. Things they didn't expect. Just be careful. The Morettis don't keep people around for long unless they're useful. Naomi opened her mouth to respond, but a second car rolled up the driveway. The man gave her a short nod, then walked away, vanishing into the shadows like he'd never been there. That night, she couldn't sleep. His words kept replaying in her mind. Unless they're useful. The next morning, when she arrived at the Moretti house, she found Luciana sitting by the window, signing frantically at Vincenzo. He looked furious, pacing the floor. When he saw Naomi, his tone softened, but his eyes didn't. It's not a good day, he said. Someone tried to threaten my mother. Nothing for you to worry about. Naomi frowned. Threaten her? Who would? Someone who wants to hurt me, he interrupted, and they thought using her would get my attention. Naomi felt a chill. Is she okay? She's fine now, he said, his jaw tight, because I made sure of it. Luciana looked at Naomi, signing quietly. He worries too much. He forgets I've survived worse. Naomi smiled gently, trying to calm her. Still, he loves you. Oh, that's something. Luciana nodded, squeezing Naomi's hand. And I love him. But he doesn't know how to live in peace. Later that day, as Naomi was packing up to leave, Vincenzo appeared again. His expression was unreadable. Naomi, he said quietly, the man who spoke to you yesterday, what did he say? She blinked, caught off guard. You know about that? I know everything that happens near this house. His tone was firm but not angry. What did he tell you? She hesitated. He said, people close to you get involved in things they don't expect. Vincenzo sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. He's not wrong. But he's not right either. You're safe here. My mother's safe because of you. I'm not sure I believe that, Naomi said softly. He looked at her for a long moment, then said, Belief isn't required, Naomi. Loyalty is... Something in his voice made her uneasy. She wanted to ask what he meant, but he walked away before she could. That night, Naomi found an envelope slipped under her apartment door. Inside was a single photo, her leaving Giovanni's, talking to one of her coworkers. On the back, a message written in block letters, Be careful who you trust. Her hands trembled slightly as she read it. She didn't know who sent it, or what it meant. But she knew one thing for sure. She was no longer just a waitress helping a kind woman. She was part of something dangerous, something that watched her even when she didn't realize it. She picked up the phone and called Vincenzo immediately. Someone left a picture of me at my door, she said. It was threatening. There was silence on the line, then Vincenzo's voice, cold and certain. I'll handle it. Who would? Naomi, he cut in. Trust me. You don't want the answer to that. Her stomach twisted. What are you going to do? Make sure they never do it again. He hung up. Naomi sat there in silence, the weight of his words pressing down on her. She wanted to believe he meant it as protection, but the look she'd seen in his eyes earlier told her the truth. He meant revenge. But what Naomi didn't realize was that his version of protection would soon cost someone their life, and put her right in the center of everything she'd tried to avoid. 2 days passed before Naomi saw Vincenzo or his mother again. The house was strangely quiet when she arrived. Too quiet. No guards near the gates, no sound of chatter from the kitchen. Even the air felt heavier, like it was carrying a secret it didn't want to reveal. She knocked lightly before entering. Luciana? It's me. From the living room, she heard movement. Luciana appeared, her face pale but calm, her eyes tired. She smiled weakly and signed, "You came. I wasn't sure you would." Naomi frowned, setting her bag down. "Of course I came. Are you okay?" Luciana hesitated before signing back. "There was trouble. My son fixed it, but I don't like the way he fixes things." Naomi's hands slowed as she replied, "What happened?" Luciana's eyes shifted toward the window, then back to Naomi. Someone hurt. Someone gone. She tapped her chest as if to say it hurt her heart to think about it. Before Naomi could ask more, Vincenzo entered the room. He looked exhausted, his sleeves rolled up again, a faint cut on his cheek. His voice was low when he spoke. "I told you not to worry about it." Naomi turned toward him. "What did you do?" "I did what had to be done," he said simply. "You mean someone's dead?" she said quietly. He didn't answer. He just looked at her, the silence saying everything. Naomi's stomach turned. "You said your mother was threatened. You didn't say you'd go after them." He stepped closer. "Naomi, if someone threatens the people I care about, they don't get to walk away." Luciana reached out, grabbing his arm. She signed furiously, her movements sharp and emotional. Naomi caught bits and pieces. "Enough. No more. You're becoming what your father was." Vincenzo's jaw tightened. "Don't," he said aloud, his tone almost a warning. Naomi watched their exchange, her chest tightening. She couldn't understand all the signs, but she didn't need to. The pain in Luciana's face said it all. After a long pause, Vincenzo turned away, running a hand through his hair. "Naomi, take her to the garden." "She needs air." Naomi nodded, gently guiding Luciana outside. They sat on a bench beneath a large tree, the late afternoon light flickering through the leaves. Luciana's hands trembled slightly as she signed, "My husband. He was like Vincenzo once. Strong, proud, dangerous." Naomi signed slowly. "He hurt people?" Luciana's eyes softened with sorrow. "Many. And he paid for it. Vincenzo was a boy when he saw his father's death. He promised never to be weak again, but strength became something else." Naomi felt a knot form in her throat. "And now you're afraid for him." Luciana nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. "He protects me, but he's losing himself." Naomi reached out, taking Luciana's hand gently. "You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, but you can remind them why they should try." Luciana smiled sadly, squeezing Naomi's hand. "You remind him. He listens to you." Naomi shook her head. "He doesn't." "He does," Luciana insisted. "You don't see it, but he does." Inside the house, a loud noise startled them both. A door slamming, followed by muffled voices. Naomi stood, instinctively stepping between Luciana and the door. Moments later, Vincenzo appeared again, his expression hard. "I'm sorry," he said, his tone softer now. "Things are tense right now." Naomi took a careful breath. "You can't keep fixing everything with fear, Vincenzo. It's killing her." His eyes met hers, and for a moment she saw something there. Guilt, confusion, maybe even pain. "You think I don't know that?" he said quietly. "But when you live like I do, fear is the only language people respect." Naomi shook her head. "That's not true. Respect built on fear isn't real." He looked at her, then away, as if her words had struck a nerve he didn't want to acknowledge. "You talk like the world's fair," he muttered. "It's not." Luciana stepped forward, signing something quickly. Vincenzo sighed and translated. "She says you remind her of hope." "That's a dangerous thing around here," Naomi smiled faintly. "Maybe it's the one thing you need more of." He stared at her for a moment longer, then nodded slowly. "You should go home. It's late." Naomi gathered her things, hugged Luciana gently, and walked toward the door. Just as she was about to leave, Vincenzo said quietly, "You don't have to come back if this makes you uncomfortable." She turned back. "Luciana needs me." "I'll be here." His eyes softened just a little. "You're brave." "Not brave," she said softly. "Just human." When Naomi left the house that evening, she didn't see the black car parked down the road or the man inside snapping photos through a long lens. Someone else was watching now, and whatever they wanted from Vincenzo, Naomi had just become part of it. But while Naomi thought she was helping heal a broken family, she was actually standing in the middle of a war that was about to turn deadly, and her kindness was the spark neither side expected. The next morning, Naomi woke to the sound of her phone buzzing over and over. When she picked it up, she saw 3 missed calls from Vincenzo and 1 short message. "Don't come today, it's not safe." Her heart pounded as she read it again. She tried calling him back, but it went straight to voicemail. A heavy feeling settled in her chest. She got dressed anyway, grabbed her keys, and left. By the time she reached the Moretti house, the gate was open, and 2 police cars were parked outside. Her stomach dropped. She pushed past one of the officers trying to stop her. "Luciana!" she shouted. "Where is she?" The officer hesitated. "Ma'am, you can't—" "Where is she?" Naomi repeated, her voice breaking. From inside the doorway, a familiar figure appeared. Vincenzo. But this time, there was no calm, no control. His clothes were wrinkled, his hands stained with dirt, his eyes hollow. He looked at Naomi like someone who hadn't slept in years. "She's gone," he said quietly. Naomi froze. "Gone?" He nodded slowly. "She had a stroke early this morning. The doctor said it was her heart, too much stress. Her knees nearly gave out. She covered her mouth, tears blurring her vision. No, she was fine yesterday." "I told her to rest," Vincenzo said, his voice cracking for the first time, "but she stayed up late. She was writing something. For you." He handed her a folded piece of paper, edges smudged from his hands. Naomi opened it carefully. It was written in Luciana's neat handwriting. "Dear Naomi, don't let this world make you cold. I lost myself trying to make my son strong. You reminded me what it means to be kind. If he listens to anyone, it will be you. Don't be afraid to make him see that strength is not silence." Naomi's tears fell onto the paper. She couldn't speak. Vincenzo turned away, his voice quiet but sharp. "I should have protected her better." "You did," Naomi said softly. "She was happy again because of you." He shook his head. "She was happy because of you. You saw her. You treated her like she mattered. I didn't even know she was still learning sign language until she met you." Naomi stepped closer, her voice trembling. "You can still honor her, Vincenzo, by living the way she wanted you to, not by scaring the world into submission." He looked up at her, eyes red, jaw tight. "You really think I can change?" "Yes," she said, "but not until you stop thinking power comes from fear. She believed in you. Don't make her wrong." He didn't answer. Instead, he walked past her, out to the porch where the wind was carrying the faint sounds of police radios and the distant hum of city traffic. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence between them said more than words could. Finally, Vincenzo took a deep breath. "I don't know what happens next," he admitted. Naomi folded Luciana's letter gently. "You start by doing what she taught you. Listen. Not with your ears, with your heart." He turned to her, and for the first time she saw not the Mafia boss the world feared, but a broken son who'd run out of ways to hide his pain. "I'll try," he said quietly. "That's all she ever wanted," Naomi whispered. Weeks later, Naomi returned to Giovanni's. Life went on, but something inside her had changed. Every time she saw someone struggling to be heard, a child tugging on their parent's sleeve, an older customer fumbling with words, she remembered Luciana's smile. She remembered the language of hands, the patience of silence, and the power of kindness that could soften even the hardest hearts. One night, near closing time, the bell above the door rang. She looked up, and there he was. Vincenzo, standing in the doorway, not in a suit this time. Just a plain shirt, sleeves rolled up, eyes tired but calm. "Didn't think I'd see you again," Naomi said. He stepped forward, holding out a small wrapped package. "My mother's recipes. She wanted you to have them." Naomi took it, smiling softly. "Thank you." "She was right about you," he said. "You're the only person who ever told me something I didn't want to hear, and I listened." Naomi nodded. "She was right about you too. You're not lost, Vincenzo. You're just learning a new language." He smiled faintly. Not the guarded, practiced one she'd seen before, but something real. "Goodbye, Naomi." "Goodbye, Vincenzo." As he turned to leave, Naomi looked down at the package in her hands. The note on top read, "For the one who spoke kindness louder than fear." She wiped her eyes and whispered to herself, "I'll make sure people hear her story." Then she went back to clearing tables, ready to face another ordinary night. But now she carried a piece of a family that had taught her the hardest truth of all. Sometimes silence says everything. Kindness doesn't always come with safety, and compassion doesn't always keep you out of danger. But it can change even the coldest heart. Be the voice or the hands that remind someone they still matter. Because sometimes the smallest gesture can echo louder than fear. But maybe that's what Luciana Moretti was trying to teach all along. That love doesn't need words. It just needs someone brave enough to listen.